I'll be back in a little bit, dude. I'm gonna go see Suspiria.
Well, have fun, dude.
That's it.
Hey everyone, this last week I went to see the new Suspiria, and a few months ago I checked out the original Suspiria, the classic, and I ended up a little bit underwhelmed. I thought it was visually stunning, I thought the colors popped and the camera work was super interesting, but I thought that the story and the writing, it could have had a bit more for me. It wasn't really doing anything to make me care for any particular character. There wasn't a clear-cut story I could follow along with. And I usually really like abstract films like that. I don't usually need a very clear-cut story, so long as it is consistent at giving me an experience, because the moment it doesn't stay consistent with that is the moment I clock out. And that seemed to happen a few different times when I watched this new remake by Luca Guadagnino. I say remake because it is essentially a completely different film. It's got a lot of similarities with the first one, but at the same time, it seems like a completely different film. Before I really dive into this, I do want to say that this film is visually stunning, for the most part. The camera work and editing is so bizarre and interesting right off the bat. It's making a lot of decisions that you would see in a 1970s horror film, but instead it's being done in 2018 with better cameras, bigger budget, better production design, and that was super cool to me. Overall, it was just a very interesting film to look at. It's hard to talk about the performances in this film because at one point they just feel like they're all blending into this atmosphere, and it's hard to really pinpoint an exact person. They all just felt like smaller parts of a larger thing, if that makes sense. So with that being said, I feel like they actually did a pretty great job. Tilda Swinton specifically being a stellar choice for this film. Everything about Tilda, just look at her. She just screams Suspiria. And how could I talk about the pros of this thing without mentioning the amazing score and soundtrack by Tom York? It went so beautifully and perfectly with everything happening in the film. Not only was it beautiful as music, but it was also just beautiful with the imagery going on. I think it's already guaranteed to be there, but I'm really hoping that this gets some Oscar recognition. And that kind of does it for my pros. I enjoyed this movie, don't get me wrong, but I was extremely underwhelmed and a bit unsatisfied by the end. Here is my main issue. This film acts like it's the most disturbing thing that's ever happened based on its Twitter promotions and just the overall tone and how seriously it takes itself. And yes, it's pretty disturbing when it's being disturbing, but 80% of this film actually kind of felt sort of bland. I don't want to say bland, it just felt more uneasy than bizarre. And my thing about Suspiria is it's best when it is being bizarre, not just kind of uncomfortable. And I say that because this film chooses to tell its story in a very unique and sort of confusing way. Like I said earlier, there are a lot of weird edits, there's a lot of odd camera work, strange dialogue, they're switching languages a lot. It's not your easiest watch if you're a typical moviegoer. And at first I kind of felt like an idiot for not understanding 100% of this film, but as soon as I walked out, it seemed as though everyone else that was in the theater was a bit confused. This confusion doesn't have a huge effect on the film if it isn't taking itself so seriously. That's why the first Suspiria kind of worked a little bit better in my opinion. But this one acts like its mother, which also isn't a great movie, but this one acts like its mother. But it doesn't deliver that same amount of consistent build-up that leaves you shaking. It just kind of leaves you wanting more. The ending, without spoiling, don't worry, is maybe my favorite part of the film. And by ending, I mean a specific scene that if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. And I say that because I was able to enjoy this scene a lot. I loved it without knowing 100% of what was happening. And that's exactly what I kind of wanted the rest of this film to be. I wanted them to be able to bring the viewer in, enjoy the experience, because that's what Suspiria is, without having to care or pay attention that much to the story. Telling a confusing and uneasy story is fine if you have something to keep the viewer invested if they're not completely on board all the way through. And to be honest, I unfortunately just wasn't on board with a lot of what was happening in Suspiria. I'm extremely conflicted. I didn't want to write this review because I just didn't know what to say about it. Part of me thinks that this is amazing because it's really kind of unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's big and all over the place and exciting to a certain extent. But another part of me is this is a mess. This is making a lot of weird choices. So I guess at the end of the day, I'm just kind of in the middle about it, which is kind of a bummer because I really wanted to love it a lot. I do want to emphasize that while I'm making it seem like this film is horrible, it's far from that. Lucas still does a great job at bringing the viewer in. He makes it very immersive. The music, some of the best this year. Every part of me wants to be obsessed with Suspiria and this whole story, but something about it just isn't clicking for me, and that's just how I feel. I'm going to give Suspiria a 3 out of 5. Ugh, man. They're just going to hate me after this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and make sure to go check out Suspiria if it's playing at a theater near you. And see you guys in the next one.